And now time for news from around the world. It's Meanwhile in. Meanwhile, in Botswana, if you were planning on seeing any of their rhinos, you might want to book a ticket now because they are unfortunately and tragically going fast. At least 46 rhinos have been slaughtered in Botswana in 10 months. The killings, slightly under 10% of their entire rhino population, have occurred in the northern Moremi Game Reserve since April of last year. Now, this happens, the killing of effectively almost decimation of their rhino population, despite the fact that they are a protected species in Botswana and fall outside the government's recent decision to end a 5-year ban on trophy hunting licenses, which is largely targeted at the burgeoning elephant population. So they do have some protections for this population, but poachers are still able to get access to them and have had a lot of success in doing that. The unprecedented rate of poaching last year, to put this in perspective, prompted the government to warn that the rhino population could be wiped out in the southern African country by 2021, not 2075, not 2050, 2021, in like a year and a half. And so just bear that in mind. These animals aren't gonna be able to be just like, plucked from some lab afterward if we at some point start to respect and value the biodiversity of our planet. We need to sustain it now while we can. So why is this happening? Poaching is fueled by a seemingly insatiable demand for rhino horn in Asia, where it's coveted as a traditional medicine or as an aphrodisiac and can fetch up to $60,000 per kilogram, an extremely valuable substance, despite the fact that rhino horn is composed mainly of keratin, the same substance as in human nails. Now, just to be clear, that market in Asia will not accept human nails. I worked my way through a couple of my nails before I figured that out. But no, but really, like, it's not magical. It doesn't have any sort of special powers. It's literally not an aphrodisiac. And yet we might lose a species. It will be gone forevermore because some people believe that it has some sort of special power. And that is why these regulations need to be strong. And indeed, in general, I would say a more critical view of trophy hunting as well as poaching is important. But unfortunately in America, our elites still think one of the coolest things in the world is to suit up, get a big rifle, go over to Africa, have them stake down an animal, walk up and blow its head off. That's the world we live in. Meanwhile, in. Meanwhile, in the UK, they're attempting to stop some of their children from developing severe issues later on in life with new regulations on how football is practiced by children. Children aged 11 and under will no longer be taught to head footballs during training in England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. The new Football Association guidelines for coaches also puts limits on how much heading older children should do. So why is this an issue? Why are they changing the ability of young kids to head footballs? Glasgow University research showed former footballers were 3.5 times more likely to die from brain disease and 5 times more likely to die from Parkinson's disease. I mean, these are, like, again, any sort of study like this, you're gonna of course have to have follow-up studies. You have to be very sure that the connection is there and that it is showing what it appears to be showing. But those are very strong impacts. And obviously in this case, very easy to avoid impacts as well, hypothetically. But that does not mean that everyone is supportive of this move. There was a quote I saw on the BBC by former Tottenham Hotspurs midfielder Jamie O'Hara, who said, "Heading a football is a skill that is essential to becoming a footballer. How do they propose they learn this if they're not allowed to head a ball?" I get that concern, and bear in mind, they're not saying in all football across all ages, no one's gonna be able to head a ball. It's literally just in training for the young kids. And so I guess hypothetically, you could have a future world in 5 or 10 years where the hot up and coming football talent doesn't know how to do that one particular thing. But I would say if we're concerned about the effect it's having on children, shouldn't we be concerned on the effect it might be having on adults who are heading far more balls? Shouldn't those adults be concerned about the effect it's gonna have on them? I know that every time we talk about the effect that sports have on people's bodies, those athletes obviously have a financial impact to do what they're gonna do, regardless of the long-term health impacts. But this is literally killing people, and it seems like it's avoidable. Meanwhile, in. Meanwhile, in Mexico, there is a women's event planned for next month, and it's fueled by growing disgust with a spate of high-profile femicides. It's gained ground on Friday as Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said public servants could participate. Sorry, I read the whole name out just in case any presidential candidates were watching. But he is saying he is not going to strike out at any female civil servants who want to participate in what is believed is going to be a very wide-scale woman-led strike across the country. He says he'll respect the strike, there will be no punishment, but he didn't openly support the event and asked women to take care, quote, not to be manipulated. And look, I am by no means an expert on Mexican politics in general, let alone the way issues like this might be manipulated by different parties and might be used in the short term by conservative political parties to make inroads against the current leadership. That said, there are a lot of issues facing Mexican women that they are thankfully organizing against, and so I'm of course supportive of that. To give you some basic information, the strike is scheduled for March 9th. Promotions began circulating this week on social networks under the slogan, "A Day Without Women," comes amid public outrage sparked by the murder of a 7-year-old girl and a woman skinned by her partner. And there's an advertisement saying, "Not a woman in the streets, at work, in schools, in universities, or shopping." Read a call to strike being distributed on social media. Again, look, do the research for yourself in terms of how different groups might be using this, but these are obviously worthy issues, and in general, activism, of course, is a good thing. And so I am glad that at the very least, some women, perhaps in high profile government positions in Mexico, will be freed up to be able to be supportive of it without worrying about the future of their career. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.